Episode 321, Confession. This unexpected roar made everyone shocked. The last time in the study, when his father asked him to kneel, he did not. At that time, Jake stood straight and said in a determined voice that he was not wrong. This time, the look of Jake was unexpectedly calm. Pushing Serena away gently, he bent his legs and went down on his knees. "Sorry, Dad. I am wrong." Alex looked at Jake admitting his mistake, and his breathing was even more hurried. He glared at him with red eyes. "Alex, get me my whip." "No need." The old voice came through smoothly. Captain Henrik walked over with his cane. Staring at his grandson, he hit him 2 more times. "I've just beaten this bastard boy dozens of times. Even my hands are sore now. You want to kill him?" Carson went to hold his father's arm without speaking. Alex glanced at them and pretended not to hear that. Carson snorted and asked, "Where were you in these years?" Jake was quiet for a moment, looked up at his father and asked, "Dad, can I stand up and tell you? My son is still inside. It would be terrible if he sees me like this." Carson was almost amused, trying not to kick him. Jake quickly looked away and stood up from the ground. Serena was afraid he would fall and quickly held him and called, "Father." When he saw this, Carson snorted and looked upset, but he didn't say anything. Going to the sofa and sitting down, he asked, "I heard that the fire was very big that day. How did you escape?" More importantly, he seemed to be half dead at the time, so serious that he couldn't move. How did he escape later? Not only Carson, everyone was curious about this, waiting for his explanation. Jake walked over and sat down opposite his father. Alex and Keith sat together with Carson. Serena and Jake were sitting on the sofa with their grandfather. So they were all facing each other. Drake sat on a chair and got himself some tea. He saw that Jake was not whipped and felt a little disappointed. "I was saved by Lila." The first sentence surprised everyone. In particular, Serena felt shocked, grasping his hand. Jake took her hand and said slowly, "She left and returned with Alan. He shot the police officer who was watching me, and then he and Lila carried me out. Wrong distracted the police officers who were chasing them, and then went to pick them up. I was thrown into the trunk. Later, they sent me to the small hospital. I was in a coma for a week in the hospital, and then lying in the bed for more than half a year." The brief explanation was frightening, leaving everyone in silence. Emma and Nola were busy in the kitchen. Nola came out with fruits and happened to hear the words of Jake, and her tears immediately fell. Putting the fruit on the table, she sat down by her husband's side, and her eyes were red. The state of Serena was not much better than her mother-in-law. She held the hand of Jake tighter and tighter. "After I could move, they sent people to imprison me. I was detained for a year and a half. There was a maid who had been undercover for a long time in the Cox family. His name is Carlito. The identity of Carlito is a police officer. He asked if I would like to be undercover with him. I was drugged by Lila and had an addiction." "Were you an addict?" Alex was shocked and glared at Jake. Jake looked at Alex and nodded. Serena thought of the voice she heard that night. Jake's pain and helplessness were all real. Clenching his hand, Serena's heart was torn apart. "Carlito promised to help me get clean, but the condition that I must help him annihilate the drug trafficking gang. I promised. Later, we spent half a year getting me clean. With his help, I trained with the police, pretending to be in prison while collecting evidence of the crimes with the police." Although the words he used were very simple, Drake could not imagine how terrifying it must be. A bit shocked, he could not help but secretly think, only Jake could do that. If it were himself, he must have died there. "Just last month, I tried to disclose information to her and let her help me cooperate with Cox Enterprise. This way, the time it took to defeat Cox Enterprise had been greatly shortened. Only when Cox Enterprise is taken care of first can we go deep into the White family." Sure enough, when Cox Enterprise was destroyed, the White's company started to transfer the goods. But because of this, I was exposed. Listening to him, everyone was even more shocked. But it's good that everything ended well. Now I'm back. Jake clenched the hand of Serena, soothing her. His voice was low and soft. "Everything's fine now. Don't be afraid." Captain Henrik immediately thought of the news he saw this morning and asked, "The White Company, you said. Is it White's musical instruments? I heard that they escaped. What should we do now?" Jake's eyes became deep and said, "This is the drawback of my exposure. If we have half a month or a month, we can perfectly get rid of all of them. This action was still too hasty and mature. The top figure ran away, but they were having a hard time trying to protect themselves and will not come back in a short time. More importantly, he's already set them up. As long as they couldn't wait and activate his trap, the people he had arranged could capture them at any time. He believed it would work out. Jake's eyes became deep as he thought about it. Nola cried and hit her husband. She said, "Jake has suffered so much outside and you still want to beat him? Are you his father?" Carson sighed and did not speak. Emma was almost done in the kitchen and she didn't know what they were talking about. Seeing such a heavy atmosphere, she said, "Come to eat. Would you call the children?"
"Then you will not go back later?"
Carson asked Jake. He shook his head. "No. Other things can be handed over to the police. It has nothing to do with me now."
"That's good. Let's eat."
Carson stood up and the family quickly went to the table. Serena led the children to the dining room and Jeremy's little face looked upset, especially after seeing Jake sitting next to Serena. He became even more pissed.